Hey, over here. Eyes on me. Listen to me. Over here. Hey, hey. All right. Welcome to Start Teacher Training. This is the channel for EFL teachers who have large classes of preschool and primary school students. My name is Will, and I'm an EFL teacher trainer located in Vietnam. Over the years, I've seen many teachers shouting, banging on their desks, waving at students, trying to get their students' attention. In fact, it's one of the most common complaints that I receive, where teachers complain that their students just don't listen to them or aren't paying attention to them. And in fact, I was one of those teachers when I first started teaching as well. Well, there are many possible causes for this kind of misbehavior, but in this video, we're going to look at one crucial cause of not paying attention to the teacher and one thing that you can do to fix this misbehavior. So if you're interested in improving your students' behavior, stay watching. So maybe this sounds familiar. You're presenting in class or you're giving instructions to your students for an activity, and then you look out over your class and you realize that some of your students aren't watching you or they're not listening to you. Or on the other hand, you tell everyone to start an activity, and then later on you look as you're monitoring and you discover there's a lot of students with these blank faces. They don't know what they're actually supposed to be doing in this activity because they weren't listening to you. This is a really common problem that a lot of new and experienced teachers struggle with in their classes every day. And the cause of this is these teachers often don't have a clear, trained routine to get their students' attention. Instead, these teachers assume that they should always have their students' attention. And so they don't prepare a positive way to ask their students for their attention. And instead, these teachers end up frustrated and angry at their students because they're not getting what they expect should just automatically be given to them. So what can we do about this? Well, the key is to create and consistently use a kind of routine called an attention grabber. This is a signal that you use to let everyone know that you want their attention. And over the years, I've seen teachers use many different kinds of attention grabbers, from yelling or banging on their desks, flipping light switches on and off, counting down, ringing bells. There's a lot of different techniques out there. But some of these are a lot more successful than others. So in this next section, let's look at what makes an effective attention grabber. Then I'll give you a couple of my favorite examples of attention grabbers, the ones that I like to use in my classes. And then finally, I'll give you a few tips on how you can make these the most successful in your lessons. So when you're choosing which attention grabber to choose, you want to keep three key principles in mind. The first of those is you want something that's going to be both fun and positive. This is because you're going to be using your attention grabber often in all of your lessons. So you don't want to choose something that's really harsh or negative because that's just going to be hurting the environment of your classroom. Instead, if you choose something that's a little funny or silly or creative, then you're going to be attracting your students' attention, not demanding it. And in the long term, that's going to be a lot more useful. The second key principle that you want to keep in mind is you want to use a call and respond format. This is where you do an action and your students know they do some other action in response. This makes it a lot more engaging and involving for your students. And also, it's going to help you very quickly notice who is paying attention and who isn't. Because if they're not doing the response, then they're not on the same page with you. The third key principle that you want to keep in mind is you want to use visible actions that you do and actions that your students do. Again, this makes it a lot more engaging and fun for your students, and it's also a lot more energetic because it involves that movement, which is much better for younger learners anyways. It also, again, helps you see who is paying attention because the actions are just very easy to see. And then finally, if your students can't hear you because they're not paying attention, they might see you or they might see their classmates doing the actions, and then that's going to attract their attention. So visible actions are going to really help you to get your students' attention. For these reasons, some of the other attention grabbers that I've already talked about, banging on desks, yelling, flipping light switches, and so on, just aren't a great option because they're really negative. They don't really have an action or a response for your students to do. And so I don't recommend doing those kinds of attention grabbers. Instead, here are my 2 favorite attention grabbers that I use in my classes. When I'm teaching preschool, I like to use something that I call the potato count. So that's where I count and then my students copy my actions. So I might go 1 potato, 2 potatoes, 3 potatoes, 4 potatoes, 5 potatoes. Shh. So that's what I do in my preschool classes. In my primary school classes, I like to use something that I call the happy claps. That's where I clap and then my students clap like me. So I might go, and then they would, or I could do, or. There's a lot of different things that I can do with my claps. I could also clap in different rhythms that my students could copy as well. And a lot of times I might finish with this as well. Now, with either of these, I have a few final tips when it comes to being really successful with your attention grabbers. The first is you want to practice, 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 practice. At the beginning of your school year or the beginning of the semester, teach your attention routine for your students and then practice it at the beginning of every single one of your lessons. That way it's fresh in your students' minds when you need it. You don't want to pull it out of your back pocket after not using it for a couple weeks because then your students aren't going to remember it. So practice, practice, practice so it's ready when you need it. The second thing that you want to keep in mind is you want to start strong and end settled. You want to catch your students' attention. So you might go like, 1 potato, or clap really loudly. But then when you're finishing, you want to finish with low energy, like 5 potatoes. That way, your students' energy levels finish quietly as well, and they're not finishing in this high energy, rambunctious way. The third tip that you want to keep in mind is you want to expect everyone's attention. You want to get everyone's attention, right? But if you've got a couple students who aren't participating in your attention routine, then it's not working. Instead, just continue trying to have fun and attract students' attention. You might want to walk over to them a little bit more just to get their attention. That way, when you finish, everyone's on the same page with you. The fourth tip that you want to keep in mind is you want to use your attention routine or your attention grabber frequently. That means 3 times, 5 times, 7 times in even a short lesson. When you want to give instructions, use your attention grabber. After a group activity or a pair activity and you want to get everyone back together, use that attention grabber. If a couple of students are talking, just quickly use your attention grabber. Just use it quickly and frequently when you need your students' attention. And the fifth tip that you want to keep in mind is keep it simple and keep it consistent. I don't recommend changing your attention routines every lesson or every month. The more common and just frequent and consistent that you keep it, then the easier it is for your students to remember it and follow along with it. If you're changing constantly, they're just going to get confused. This is especially true if you see your students infrequently, like once a week. In those cases, I've used the same attention routine or attention grabber for months and years with the same students, and it's fine because they don't really get tired of it. If you're seeing your students 5 days a week, then you might want to have 2 or 3 different kinds of attention grabbers that you use just to provide a little variety in the lesson. But the same message should be clear that when I do these actions, you pay attention to me. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video and found it to be useful, don't forget to click like and subscribe. And what other routines do you use in your lessons to get your students to behave better? You can share those in the comments section below. Thanks again. See you next time.